he'd undertaken at home. But a shadow has fallen over his premiership this past week, with an outbreak of violence in Ethiopia's Oromia region, which claimed the lives of nearly 70 people. The unrest began when Jawar Mohammed, a prominent Oromo activist and journalist, said the government was trying to remove his bodyguards. His followers and supporters then took to the streets in protest against Abiy Ahmed. Non-ethnic Oromos were also attacked. Mr. Jawar was exiled to the United States, and upon his return to Ethiopia last year, after Abiy Ahmed, also an Oromo, became Prime Minister, he has become increasingly critical of Ethiopia's leader, even calling him a dictator. So, what are his fundamental differences?
I don't think we have such a fundamental difference. I think we do have in recent months. He's been pushing to centralize the country. He's been trying to weaken the federal system while strengthening the center, and I believe that will be problematic. It will further polarize the country as the various communities who have been historically marginalized will be resisting.
I mean, you're quoted as having described Abiy Ahmed as a dictator. That's quite strong language.
He has begun showing the early signs of dictatorship and authoritarianism. In recent months, even his colleagues within the executive committee of the ruling party have been facing intimidation when they oppose certain policies and drives he was making. And also we witnessed the renewed use of some repressive laws. For example, the anti-terrorism law that was used by the previous regime to stifle dissent is now being used against the opposition across the country.
Are you saying, therefore, that Abiy Ahmed did not deserve the Nobel Peace Prize?
I believe he deserves. I think the first year of his premiership was quite productive, particularly on the neighborhood. What he has done with Eritrea was quite admirable. His intervention in Sudan, brokering deal between the opposition and the military is quite successful, and also diffusing tension between Djibouti and Eritrea. He has done quite well in terms of regional policy. He had also initiated some reform when he first came, but I think those reforms are now being rolled back.
Why aren't the two of you, both ethnic Oromos, allies?
Our difference is on how to manage this transition. I'm of the opinion that the transition requires bringing the various ethnic elites, the various political organizations to the table to negotiate the terms of transition. For example, the electoral rules, power sharing issues, how the country will be managed before and after the election. He hasn't done that.
He has a very different job to yours. The Prime Minister has to balance the interests of all the different ethnic groups in Ethiopia. Could it not be that you are more concerned with preserving, ensuring Oromo interests? Isn't that the fundamental difference?
Not necessarily. I don't believe the Oromo interest is contradictory to interest of the other ethnicities in the country. Free, democratic, federal Ethiopia would be good for Oromo as much as it's good for other part of the country.
Isn't that what you have at the moment? A federal democratic country?
We don't have a federal democratic country. The problem we had with the previous government was we had a federal system without democracy. We fought to democratize the federal system. Right now what we are facing is a prime minister who is anti-federal system and also who is not taking the necessary consensus-based approach towards democratizing the country. Our fear is we are going to lose both democracy and the federal system if we let him be the way he is right now.
Returning, though, to the violence this past week in Oromia itself, there were occasions when members of non-Oromo ethnic groups were attacked. That's something presumably you condemn.
Yes, I strongly condemn it. I believe in non-violence. We produced the current change not through guns, not through violence.
Well, that was Jawar Mohammed, a prominent Oromo activist and journalist in Ethiopia. And listening to that was Tietel Tromvel, Professor of Peace and Conflict Studies at Bjørknes University College and Director of Oslo Analytica. Firstly, Professor, how significant a figure is Jawar Mohammed?
Well, he is enormously influential today in Ethiopian politics and Ethiopian discourse as a prominent Oromo activist and has millions of followers on his social media platforms. So he is hugely influential in Ethiopian politics.
Would it be right to describe him as an Oromo nationalist?
Yes, it would be in the sense that he has consistently over a number of years in exile in US and upon his return to Ethiopia, arguing for the Oromo cause and for Oromo representativeness within the Ethiopian federal system.
And of course, the Oromos are the largest ethnic group in Ethiopia, but there is an Oromo prime minister now, so arguably the Oromos are on the ascendancy.
Yes, it is. And that's part of the issue we see unfolding today among the broad Oromo masses, that they feel it is their turn to reclaim some of the power they have been marginalized to have during the last 3 or several decades. And the problem is also that the prime minister is maybe, in the view of Jawar Mohammed and his allies, that he's deviating from the Oromo cause. The prime minister is becoming more Ethiopianist than he is becoming an Oromo defender, so to say.
Because Jawar Mohammed describes Abiy Ahmed as opposed to the federal system. I mean, what does he mean by that?
I think that's a too strong a statement. But clearly the prime minister has been trying to craft a new Ethiopia, the Medimer Ethiopia, that you have a commonness among all Ethiopian ethnic groups, and that's what the Prime Minister is stressing, that they need to work together at a national level. But what Jawar is arguing is that the Prime Minister was brought to power by the Oromo protest movement, the ghetto, and he is kind of leaving his base, so to say, behind and turning into a pan-Ethiopianist. And by that, he is undermining the federal system, according to Jawar.
I mean, presumably this conflict between two such prominent Oromo figures in Ethiopia doesn't augur well for the future of the country.
No, that's true. It is, such a rather insignificant event which sparked the current unrest over the last couple of days, which have led to at least 67 people dead and several hundred injured. What can we expect coming the election next spring, when it is really a contested election? What kind of level of unrest can we foresee? So it is very, very challenging times ahead for Ethiopia and the Prime Minister.
Chetel Trumbull, Professor of Peace and Conflict Studies at Bjørknes University College and Director of Oslo Analytica. Many thanks. An annual 2-week